Welcome back, friends, to a very special episode of Your World of Creativity. In our podcast, we travel around the world talking to creative practitioners who are really turning their ideas into impact. And so today I wanted to bring together some of the leaders that I've talked to in the podcast in the past, from film and animation, hospitality, consumer brands, experiences, both live and online, to really explore a theme of teamwork. Often we have this image of creative people in the basement in a dimly lit workshop working solo, but we know that to get the ideas out into the world might take dozens, hundreds of contributors along the way. And that's the kind of complexity and teamwork and collaboration and leadership we want to explore today.
Unlocking your world of creativity with best-selling author and brand innovator, Mark Stinson. This episode is brought to you by White Cloud Coffee Roasters, where every bean tells a story of adventure. Visit whitecloudcoffee.com and use the code CREATIVITY.
I'll start with some quick introductions. I have Stephen Puri, Matt McLean, Michael Robinson, Rich Magallanes, Tom Bairstow, and Diego Polito all on the line. Maybe we can go around the room, folks, and just tell us a little bit about what you're working on now. And I'd say I'm looking for maybe a word or two that you think describes great collaboration. Stephen, maybe we'll start with you.
Okay, so I run a focus community. We have a flow state app called the Suka that helps people work, especially valuable in the era of people competing with AI slop. So we help people actually do work that AI can't do. And one thought I would share is egoless, like free of ego.
All right. Michael, what are you working on and what's a great collaboration to you?
So I'm Michael, originally from New Zealand, currently in Dubai, a bit of a worldwide traveler. I run luxury hotels, currently the general manager of the Anantara, the Palm in Dubai. For me, creativity is a huge part of our job on a daily basis. And my job is really just to push creativity in amongst every department to look at exceeding expectation.
Very nice. And Rich.
Rich Magallanes. I'm an executive producer, creator, showrunner, developer, all things animation. Lately, I have in my industry, as everybody probably knows, imploding a little bit. So lots of shows have shut down and I've been jumping off on my own. And I'm about to launch my own brand, which will include a symposium, a podcast. I'll be doing coaching and speaking and mentoring and collaboration with a lot of people. I got a lot of spinning plates going on. And for a great collaboration, I think the one word I like is synergy, because it has a lot of energy to it. And it's everybody in one lane moving down the same road.
Very good. Diego, welcome in.
Thank you for having me here again. I'm what's commonly known as a user experience or interaction designer. I've worked at companies like Adobe, JP Morgan Chase, Google, Walmart, and now I'm at Amazon, working in the payment space for that. And collaboration is an intrinsic part of the design practice that I follow. We're a very collaborative field. So to me, we need to have a clarity about the problem we're solving, like who we're solving it for, what done means to the team, and what trade-offs are really acceptable. Otherwise, you're just doing parallel work. So that's what collaboration is to me, share clarity.
Tom, hello, welcome.
Nice to see you again, Mark. Nice to meet everyone here. I'm Tom Bairstow. I'm the founder of North House. We are a multimedia design and creative studio based in London, but operating worldwide. Most recently, we worked with Disneyland Paris on their castle show, which happens every single night, entertains thousands of guests per year, where we projection map the castle and Main Street, USA. I'm currently working on a few exhibitions with the V&A Museum. We're working on the Brit Awards with some great people and great artists. And we have a lot in store coming up this year. A huge part of our world is collaboration. And it's really difficult to define it into one word. But I think if you were to sum it up, it's exactly as you said, Diego, in your much better microphone than mine, by the way. Fantastic. But I think if I was to really sum up collaboration, it's a shared and defined vision, really. And I think is what we try and achieve at every step of our process. is how to make sure that everyone's perception and what this collective vision is unified so we can clearly collaborate without obstruction in many ways. And of course, underneath all that, there's going to be a sense of passion to make sure we're unified in the approach.
So good. And Matt, how about you?
Hi, Matt McLean, Uncle Matt's Organic, the founder, chief uncle, 26-year overnight success. Been working on it for quite some time. Family business out of Florida. Collaboration for me means cross communication, making sure when we collaborate within from manufacturing to supply chain all the way through to being creative on what products that we're going to be developing. So collaborating really well, and then also collaborating with our customer, listening to them. What are they telling us to do? What do they want? Collaborating from that sense and being creative with new products that differentiate us from the competition beyond just orange juice.
Yes. Well,
Thanks for
certainly.
having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you. Great to have you all. Each of you have described this creativity process as a team sport, as a team adventure, as a team ecosystem. And I'm very curious in practice how you keep that team together, how you communicate. What is the goal? What is the mission, the vision? Tom, maybe we could start with you. Certainly there's a brief that says, here's the event that we're trying to create, but a brief is only the mechanisms. What about the vision that you want the team to focus on? How do you bring that together?
It's a good question. I think we tend to go through multiple phases, even in the project's infancy, which is essentially, it really depends on how strong a client's vision is and how defined it is, because some clients have just one idea that is just, can you help define the details on this? Other ones you find out further in the process might have a lot more detail than anticipated. But I think the clear thing really from the offset is having those workshop conversations with the client to understand what their vision is, what's in their mind and their imagination, and then to dissect that, break it apart and take practical and logistical steps forward with it. And obviously there's certain parts in that process where we bring in parts of our team, extensions of our team, and then potentially bring in other suppliers. And so actually, as I said earlier, defining the vision and making sure everyone's aligned as early as possible really helps to streamline that process and get the best out of the project. And that is the ultimate goal at these initial steps of the process.
And Rich, in your animation projects, the story is key. So everybody has to really understand what the story is, but also the mood, the feel, because you can tell a story a lot of different ways. How do you bring all those contributors together?
It's like you just said, we have a blueprint. We have a foundation to start from. It's not just one single story. It's the overall, many collective stories driving into the series. And it's about building a community and making sure everybody is on the same page, whether you be the showrunner or the creator of that experience, that show, that world that you're building. You have to have a clear vision of it, and you have to be able to execute that out and communicate it clearly with context and concisely to everybody, so everybody's working in their own right toward that goal, whether it be writers or character designers or background artists or voiceover actors. Everybody has to be carrying the same message forward. And so it's quite a collaborative experience and can be quite chaotic at the same time. But yeah, having that unified vision goal starts with your captain, your leader, your showrunner, executive producer, and creator.
And to pick up on your word experience, Michael, I think about hospitality being all about the guest experience, especially properties like the ones you are at, luxury resort. I think about, yes, the customer facing, the guest facing people, but housekeeping, food service, front desk, back of house. What's the misconception you think is in your industry about creativity in the guest experience?
I think the biggest misconception is things come naturally. Trying to have a seamless guest experience or being able to create a memorable moment for a guest. There is a lot of groundwork that came into that. There's a lot of policies, procedures that are put in place. But at the same time, we need to ensure that we allow our staff to go off book and to be able to make it feel like these types of experiences or this guest service comes naturally. and it's from the heart, which essentially is what we really want out of them. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of training. It takes a lot of follow-up, a lot of coaching and mentoring. And in order to have a team that's able to deliver seamless guest experiences day in, day out, there's a lot of hard work that goes into that. And sometimes you're lucky, and sometimes things don't always go the way that you would like them to. But it's really about how people can pick up that drop ball again and be able to change reality once again. And so, yeah, the biggest misconception is really that things happen natural, because unfortunately it's not always that easy.
And Matt, I think about in your business, this balance between, yes, you want creativity and you want people bringing new ideas, but there are standards. There's manufacturing standards, quality standards, et cetera. How do you balance those two things?
For us, we have FDA standards, USDA standards, and then our own internal standards. We want to be above those from a quality standpoint. When you taste us, you want to tell a friend, you want to drink it again. So we always want to be known for flavor first, and we go beyond that. And then to be creative, we try to come up with different flavor profiles that may be unique, or different functional benefits that are different. We have probiotics, prebiotics in some of our juices. We have low sugar, sweetened without typical cane sugar. We do things like turmeric for inflammation. So being creative, and also just listening to the customer and following better standards than what are set by USDA or FDA.
And Diego, in the companies like Amazon and Google and Walmart that you've been in, highly structured environments, lots of people, lots of moving parts, and yet the collaboration is going in the same direction, you hope. How do you bring all those engineers, product managers, stakeholders, and still protect that user experience that you're going for?
To answer that, I think it's important to, since we're talking about collaboration as a team sport, to treat it almost like an actual real sport, which is share rules, clear roles, who's doing what, practice, feedback, and understanding that obviously, like, when it comes to any potential outcomes a team sport may have, it's that every outcome is interdependent. So you don't win just by doing something on your own in isolation. So when it comes to working with product managers, engineers, or marketing people, anybody you're working with in any type of effort, is sharing early, sharing often, getting everybody on the same page. To my earlier point about like share outcome, share clarity, so that everybody knows their role is, and everybody's also invested in the overall outcome. So that way there's this level of agency, a level of ownership towards that. And that also brings everybody together on the same page. And I think that's applicable no matter really the company, no matter the goal, as long as people are invested and have their clear shared vision as to what success is. That really gets things on the other end.
Stephen, picking up on that, you're working in some user experience type space to really put your team in the seat, seeing things through the eyes of the user, the customer. How are you sharing that with the team and the contributors?
I think a lot of that is direct. It's to have user feedback firsthand is really great, because there's no one interpreting for you what it was they said and giving you a synopsis of it. So I think as much as that's raw recordings is really helpful. I do want to hang a lantern on something Rich said that I think was really well put, which is, it is true that we're talking about collaboration, teamwork, coming together to do creative things. It is really important to have someone who is clearly the leader of that, who has the vision. And hopefully that person is egoless, as I mentioned before, where toward that vision, they can hear idea that maybe even conflict with something they had preconceived, and recognize as a better idea and adopt it for the project. But you can't have, I haven't seen great collaborations move forward without someone being able to say, yeah, this is actually true to the vision. Let's do it. Because then you end up with a whole bunch of, what did we do in the last meeting? I don't know. Do we decide anything? That sort of thing. Rich, I saw you unmuted. Do you want to say something?
I'm thinking like, yes, ego less. It's 100% true. Your person in charge is not a likable person. You're going to have a whole lot of trouble. And so you have to, what happens sometimes is that we hire other people to come in to what I call be the adult in the room. Even if somebody else created it, you have somebody else there to like sort things out, communicate the execution of everything, and to keep the team together to really help. And it usually happens when you have a newer type creator or showrunner, or somebody who hasn't actually done it before but had the idea of the show. I just agree 100%.
Tom, I can imagine in the concerts and large scale events, egos no question, come into play. How do you find that room when the room is filled with my idea, quote unquote, my vision? This is what I want. How do you balance that with let's put the show together as a team?
Again, it's a good question. I think something that's really important is the delegation aspect of collaboration. And actually within that is actually great collaboration is being able to give time and space for independent working and then know when it's time to collaborate. So it's not just about let's collaborate all the time because that's impractical. It's actually more about knowing everyone's parameters, when someone needs to have their own time and space to deep work, when a team needs to have their own time and space to deep work, and then when you then align and unify again. And I think that in itself, kind of leading it back into dealing with egos can really help because at least you're giving people that responsibility for their portion of whatever the project, the show, the experience is. And for instance, in a lot of our work, we tend to be peer-to-peer and side-by-side with a lot of other companies and departments. So for instance, we'll often be side-by-side with lighting departments or staging departments or scenic. And I think, again, it's really important to have focus time where you're independently working, but then have that shared moment where you do collectively collaborate. It does vary from project to project, of course, but I think it's ultimately a sense of reading the room, but then knowing when to switch that dial into collaboration and when the time is there for deep work as well.
Yes. And Matt, I think about your brand where literally your name is on it, but the priorities of budget, margin versus creativity, speed versus quality. Let's get the product out. We got to meet the deadlines. We got to meet the delivery. Where do these clashes need a leader, need a creative hand to keep the team together?
When you're in manufacturing, there's always production versus quality, right? We need to get it out the door, and then quality says, hey, it doesn't meet our standard, slow down. So you need to have everybody bought into the mission, the vision of the company. It's really helpful. When we hire people, we start off with, here's our mission, here's our core values. We're about organic, we're flavor first. And if we don't win there, we won't win at all. So if you have that understanding, and when you're out there in the manufacturing facility, it's not all about throughput and getting cases produced. It's about quality cases produced. And so when people see the whole mission and vision and why we have a competitive advantage in the marketplace, and that's around quality first for us, that's how you overcome those. And people can collaborate together and say, okay, wait a minute, let's take a step back. Let's solve this problem together for the greater good of the customer that's here we're serving.
Yes. Michael, I think maybe there's a impression that a high-end hotel and hospitality type operation has unlimited budget, unbridled creativity. But yes, there are still budgets, there's still local regulations, there's still lots of parameters to work within. How do you lead your team to stay creative, to stay focused on the guest, even with some of those limitations?
Good question. I think it's really all about vision. A lot of it is about making sure that you have a vision and you have an end goal. Now, there's many paths that can get to that end goal. Of course, we would like to have unlimited budgets. Of course, we're able to do whatever we would like, when we would like. In reality, that doesn't always happen. So I think it's really important to empower a team, to give them the opportunity to be creative on their own, and to give them the empowerment that you're the one that's in front of this guest. You're the one that's responsible to exceed this guest's expectations. It's not always about how much money you want to spend onto them. A lot of it is about those small, intangible moments, the emotions that you end up bringing out of a guest that actually becomes a lot more worthwhile than anything that you would have to pay for or what they would pay for.
Yes. Diego, can you think about the kind of constraints we've been talking about, timelines, budgets, technical limitations, where that actually improved the creativity? The tighter the restriction, the more creative we had to be.
That's how I do most of anything in life. I think I work very well under pressure. If there's a deadline, I might likely, I don't know if that's like a psychological condition or what, but I think that one of the things, and a lot of my career has been based on mobile design or designing for mobile surfaces. What I like about that a lot is that very element of the power of constraint. You have a very small screen. You have to be very diligent about what options do you offer on the screen, how many steps does it take to do X, Y, Z. So constraint does breed that level of creativity. It really puts me at least on my toes of making decisions quickly. And one of the artifacts that we use when in user experience design a lot is not only just mock-ups or wireframes, but also prototypes. So having to create a really quick prototype, beginning to end, showing a flow will help towards collaboration in terms of having a clear, tangible thing that allows for better decisions, that allows for what would otherwise be like an abstract debate, like having to allow for concrete decisions, clarify trade-offs. And when you're having either a time constraint or any other type of constraint, say maybe a technical constraint, engineering comes and tells us you cannot do this because of these reasons, we have to pivot and find the same solution, but in a way that we can actually build it. All those things tend to breed more creativity on my end, or at least for me as a designer. And that in turn, most of the time ends up helping decision making and just getting any project towards the other side.
I have to
Please.
pick on something you said, Diego, because I think that is so
Yeah.
true. And I don't know that we've touched upon that. So back in the old days when dinosaurs roamed the earth, I produced digital effects. So I produced the digital effects for Independence Day, the movie, and it was a horrific experience. We did it at a News Corp company, insanely cheap. Every decision, why should that be painted? Why can't, was questioned. We had to fight for every penny. At the end of the day, we did win the Academy Award for visual effects. It became the third highest grossing movie in film history at the time, right? So going into the next movie, the guys wrote a script and TriStar had been wooing them pretty strongly to come over there. And no one at the studio felt they were in a position to question anything. And the script had fundamental problems. Like you didn't know, were you rooting for the monster, against the monster? Like it was just like their first draft, but everyone's, I'm not gonna be the one to give you any constraints, do whatever you want. And the movie was deeply flawed. So anyway, so I'm totally with you. There's something about having that creative tension that does cause you to shake out some of the bad decisions and become more creative with your true decisions.
Rich, what do you think about that?
Yeah, it's just to continue along that line. I always find when you get creative notes from the network or just from your team in general about what you can and cannot do or what needs to change and reasons why, you have to be flexible. And I always find that as much as in love with your idea and the execution of what you have going on right at that moment, and you got to pivot and change, you usually come up with something better. You know, and as heartbreaking as it is in that moment, if you need to take a moment to go have your little
I need to
tantrum
step
or
out
do
for a
whatever.
moment.
I do that often because you fall in love with your ideas, but then if they say we can't do it, or it's just taking too much time, or whatever it is, or it's over budget or something, how are we going to do it in another way? And you have to really, it makes you sit there and really think, how creatively am I going to go around this obstacle? And you end up doing something. We did it on my show, Rainbow Butterfly Unicorn Kitty, where we had to cut cost drastically. And so we just came up with really creative, unique ways to do it. And I was like, I love this. It ended up being like some of my favorite parts of the show. So I like being forced actually into doing something a little differently.
I think coupled with that is the thought, or at least my observation, very few people are articulate about exactly the notes they want to give. So often you have to listen for the note behind the note. So if someone says, oh my God, I don't believe this thing, I don't like this button, blah, blah, blah. If you dig down deeper, you go, what it is, this evokes for you fintech app, but you want to create social app. Oh, okay, gotcha. I understand the note behind the note. It's not this button, right? It's very rare you find someone who's so self-aware that they can articulate the exact note as opposed to making you listen for what are you really responding to. Anyway.
This is fantastic. And Tom, keeping this ego and passion in check sometimes, again, in the room. I loved our first conversation that we talked about. You started your company in the bedroom. Now you're in the boardrooms of the biggest companies out there. So the creativity demand gets higher and higher, and yet you're still having to protect the creative vision among all those competing interests. How do you lead through that?
I think, as you said, relating it back to ego and everything we've been talking about there, I think it's important to build the experience for the user and for the audience. And it's almost in those times where you're getting the notes and the notes might not quite align with your particular vision, but to actually consider what everyone else's vision is. And the key thing is considering what the audience's perspective is. So designing it for the audience has always been quite a helpful thing to remove yourself from the ego. But I think something that we really picked up on, especially from working with Disney on a few occasions, was I'm not sure if this is their terminology or if I picked this up, but the radical transparency ethos, which is a blessing and a curse, but it's really helpful in many ways, as you're saying, Stephen, to actually, what is the note behind the note? If someone can just feel they can be freely transparent and direct with exactly the notes without trying to sugarcoat it, it's so much more helpful for everyone in the process. And again, it does require you to remove the ego hat and to really consider the bigger perspective. But I think to the overall perspective of the project, the show, the experience, it yields much better results to be able to absorb the direct and transparent notes and think about it from someone else's perspective other than just your own ego.
And Matt, you mentioned getting it right from the first hire. I wanted to ask you and Michael about that hiring process. How can you hire? How can you screen for, interview for trust and transparency?
You go deeper into references if you want to look at the integrity and try to find it. You can see on a resume if somebody's jumping every year to a different job, you want to dig a little deeper. We look for people that have tenure somewhere, right? They stayed 3, 4, 5 years. They moved from some level to a little bit higher. That shows us they're committed to whatever company and vision they were before. And then we judge when they come to us, do they show a passion for us? And when you ask them general questions in an interview, tell us why you like Uncle Matt's. You'd be surprised how many people have not done any research. You go, okay, that's probably not the right person. You want somebody who comes in and goes, oh, here's all my things I love about Uncle Matt's. I have friends that tell me about it. I drink it regularly. And here's some of the questions I have about your vision. What turns me on? So you can tell that they have the same passion that you have. And you can get so much more out of employees if they're passionate about your mission than if they're there for a job, a job. They'll go a lot further for you. They'll tell a lot more people. And that's the beauty of it. But you have to dig a little deeper and look at resumes and then talk to references when you get to the next stage. And obviously, hope you have some proficiency testing for them as well, so they're not telling you a whole lot of things that they really can't accomplish.
Sure.
For me, it's all about personality. I think, especially in hotels, you can always train someone how to do a job, but you can't train someone to have that personality, to have empathy, to have that genuine care for a guest. I think what Matt put on, Matt spoke about earlier, was when someone doesn't know anything about your company, it also comes down to passion. It's not just about a job. You don't want someone that's going to come in work day in, day out, and be able to put a smile on their face and be able to create memorable experiences for our guests that like being there. And so I think it's one of my questions whenever I go through an interview is, tell me about the property. What do you know about this hotel? And then I listen and to try and understand what research have they done and what do they really understand about this property, or are they just reading what they've read off the internet? Have they been there? Have they come and had a look? They spoke to a friend about it. Because I think that's really about personality and passion. For me is two keys.
Double click on something that Matt said here in terms of hiring someone who's shown passion and tenure and staying in a position for a long time. That's how I grew up thinking of the professional world. Like, it looks bad on a resume if you've been in a place for like a little time and jumping around. But from a technology standpoint, I actually ended up finding through my own experience that was, if anything, more of an advantage than anything. And the opposite became true. Is why have you stayed at a company for so long? Why have you become stagnant in a way? Which is a complete 180 and all of that in the way that I originally also grew up learning, especially in a world right now in terms of technology where I came into this world like post Web 2.0, then mobile revolution came around. There was like an adjacent blockchain crypto thing that started to take some of that talent away into them. Then AR, VR came around, and what's the talk of the town nowadays? AI. So it's like AI now is all this, all that. So being able to keep up with those changes as a practitioner in design or product or engineering, in fact, has resulted in resumes that are just like showing a lot of different places, 6 months, a year and a half, and somehow that became a badge of honor in a way. So it's interesting to see it from a different point of view, but adaptability is ultimately what keeps us thriving in this space.
So true.
I think
So-
it's the difference in the industries, I would imagine there, Diego, between us.
Definitely.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
Very interesting, though, the different dynamic there.
Yeah. And it certainly shows a one size fits all doesn't always work,
Right.
does it? Yeah. So I'd like to throw a little curveball as we close here. First of all, I can't thank you enough for a great conversation about creativity. But we've been talking about creativity, collaboration, teamwork, and leadership. And if we're not careful, we'll land on leadership. Like, how can I be a better leader? But I'd like to ask you what advice you would give our listeners to be a better collaborator, to be a better team mate, that you're in the room, we've got to work together, and you really want to be the example of collaboration. Michael, maybe we could start with you.
For me, it's about trust. I think you've got to make sure that you trust on someone or you trust your team to be able to get the job done. I think I would imagine this rolls a lot of industries, micromanaging. If you don't trust your employees to be able to get the job done or your teammates to be able to do the job, you can't do it all yourself. So for me, I think the key word there is trust.
Very good. Rich?
I think the key word that comes to mind is ownership. Take on the responsibility of owning your role, owning your duties and what you are going to bring forward. I think about, I used to say this all the time to any kind of intern or lower level person I was working with. When I was working in production, I had a walkie-talkie out in the middle of the desert, and that was my job, to let them know when a car was coming, and I was sweating and it was hot and it was horrible. But we're all working together, and the last thing people want is to have somebody has a bad attitude. So I would come in for lunch and they would say, "How you doing out there?" And I'd say, "I'm doing great." Like, I was owning my job. I was doing my responsibility. And I'd say, "Do you need something?" or whatever. And so the next job came around. They said, "You should hire that guy. He's got a great attitude." So that was something I fell upon myself in learning how to take ownership of that and responsibility of your role. And I think if you do that, then you build that trust, and then you build everything else that comes with it. But you need to hone in on yourself and say, "I'm going to own this. I'm going to do the best that I possibly can. And I'm going to bring it to the table."
So good. Stephen?
I have a strong belief that everything the smart crew is going to say I would nod along with. So let me say this. There is an improv game called Yes and. How many people have played that?
Sure.
Yes.
Played that. Where essentially the rule is that you can't invalidate what came before, but you can take it where you want to go. So for those who maybe haven't played improv games, I'm looking at you, maybe Matt or Michael, run around weird stages with people you don't know. It is something where the tacit agreement is, okay, the two of you are making this up as you go. It's so great we got here to Detroit. And the next person is like, "Yes, I love Detroit, but it's raining." And you're like, "I know it's raining." And you carry on as you've created a whole story out of it. And it's a great, in addition to being amusing AF when you're doing it and listening to it, it's also a great way to break yourself of disagreeing with the person before you, which is very easy to do when you have a different idea, to be like, "Oh, we're not going to do that." But rather be like, "You know what? We absolutely could, blah, blah. And what if we were to do this thing and lead people along in a positive way?"
Very good. Matt, what about you? Your name is on the bottle, and yet
Right.
we want you to be
Right.
a collaborator now.
We kind of start with just a character, being a person of high character. So when you go into any conversation, just the simple golden rule, treat others the way you'd like to be treated. So when you're in conversations, have respect, be professional, have integrity, agree to disagree if you have problems. Just be a person of high character with the golden rule, and you usually come out the other end in a good spot. And I've learned it the hard way.
That's usually how we learn it, isn't it?
That's right.
Yes. Diego, how can we be a better teammate?
I don't know who said this or alluded to the root of every problem being communication. So I think that applies here as well. Obviously, but what I mean by that is, again, circling back to what we talked about at the beginning, which is like a shared vision of clarity and defining roles that accounts for really good collaboration, like speaking in the receiver's language. That's also part of communication. If you're talking to a PM, you're talking about outcomes. If you're talking to an engineer, you're talking about constraints. Like all of that also keeps things really moving along. And one thing that I'll add a little bit more specifically to my field of design is that bringing an artifact instead of an opinion, meaning bringing an image that people can react to, bringing in a prototype, bringing something that people can react to align on that vision for collaboration typically also helps steer that ship forward. So that's what I find applicable.
So good. I love that. Bring an artifact, not an opinion. That'll be my bumper sticker of the day. Pam, what's your experience? Because clearly the reason clients would keep hiring you over and over is they say you're good to work with, not good to work for. So what is collaboration and what is your advice to help us be better?
I think both from a client's perspective and teamwork's perspective, I think collaboration is ultimately finding alignment, is creating a safe space for transparency. And I think it really then is about finding the correct balance between self-sufficiency and boundaries, and then actually time for shared and collective work. And that really, for me, is the key component there.
Good. Folks, what a great panel on creativity, collaboration, teamwork. Overall, what does it take to work together better? Really a challenge of our times, isn't it? We're so divided in so many areas, and yet we put together these teams cross-generational, cross-culture, cross-continents, and we're expected to all work together. You've really shared a lot of great components. Thanks for being on the program.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Great
and
conversation.
listeners, hope you've got a lot out of this. Film and animation, hospitality, live events, consumer brands, UX design, and yet look at the thread that went through this. Aligning vision, navigating constraints, building trust, handling creative conflict, leading even when you're not the only decision maker. In almost every case we heard today, there's no one person who says, then I decided this is what we're going to do. We have to work together. And that's my big takeaway, that creativity doesn't happen in isolation. It happens in relationships. It happens in teams. And I hope you've enjoyed that too. So thanks for all our panelists, and thank you for coming by. All their contact information and links will be in the show notes. Want to be sure you're able to connect with them at their companies, on their LinkedIn's, because I know they've got so much information and they're happy to share it with you. And of course, if you enjoyed this episode, take a moment to subscribe. This is the kind of program we do every week. So rate us, review us, and come back for our next episode. Until next time, when we sit down with another creative practitioner to find out how they get inspired and organize ideas, I'm Mark Stinson, and we'll keep unlocking your world of creativity.
This episode is brought to you by White Cloud Coffee Roasters, where every bean tells a story of adventure and passion. Nestled in the heart of Idaho's mountain wilderness, White Cloud has been mastering the craft of coffee for more than 38 years, bringing the spirit of the outdoors into every cup. Discover the difference in their premium beans, meticulously roasted to capture the essence of the mountains. From robust, full-bodied classics to creative flavored blends, White Cloud coffees are designed for you to appreciate the subtleties of premium coffee. Now, listeners of our podcast can get an exclusive 10% discount. Just use the promo code CREATIVITY at checkout. Visit whitecloudcoffee.com and use the code CREATIVITY for your 10% discount. Start your adventure today. Journey to whitecloudcoffee.com.